How could you bring this shame on our family, Emma? Dad's voice exploded through the kitchen, bouncing off every wall. He stood at the head of the table, face tight with anger and disappointment. Eliza leaned against the counter, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin, unimpressed line. She just watched. I sat there, frozen, heart pounding, feeling their judgment like a weight pressing down on my chest. My name's Emma Morgan. I'm 26, and tonight everything's falling apart. Dad, my only parent left, looked at me like I was a stranger. Eliza, my twin, the one who always landed on her feet, didn't even try to defend me. And now, with accusations flying and everyone convinced I'm guilty, I realized just how alone I really was. It all started with those court orders. They landed at Dad's house, each one worse than the last. They said I'd defaulted on a bunch of loans, accounts I didn't even remember opening. I'd gotten weird calls lately, people talking about loans I needed to repay. I brushed them off as scams. But these were official. The legal threats hung over me, dark and heavy, and that's when everything really crashed down. I didn't do it, Dad, I said, my voice shaking but steady. I don't know how this happened, but it wasn't me. Eliza's eyes flickered and she finally spoke, her voice dripping with pity. Come on, Emma. Are you really denying it? Your name's right there on the documents. Why don't you just admit it and stop dragging this out? Dad's face got even harder. So what? You expect me to believe this is all some big coincidence? The loans, the complaints, people from those places accusing you? Why would they target you out of the blue? I swallowed, forcing myself to answer. Because someone framed me. Someone used my name. I don't know how, but I swear, Dad, I didn't do this. I looked at Eliza. She threw up her hands, mocking me. Framed, really? Who would go through all that trouble, Emma? And for what? It just sounds like another excuse. Dad shook his head and started pacing. Emma, I've tried to be patient, but this is too much. You're not a child anymore. You need to own up to what you've done. Until you do, you're not welcome here. His words hit me like a slap. The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. You're kicking me out? I whispered. I stood there, numb, as his words sank in. Eliza sighed, all drama, and shook her head. I hate to see this, but maybe some time away will help you figure things out, Emma. Her voice sounded sweet, but the concern felt fake. I looked at her, my throat tight with anger and disbelief. You love this, don't you? My voice came out low. You've always been the golden one, and now you get to watch me take the fall for something I didn't do. Dad cut me off. Eliza's not the problem here, Emma. You are. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Pack your things. Leave tonight. That was it. No arguing, no second chances. I turned away, chest aching, biting back tears. Nothing I said would make them believe me. I packed in silence. Each piece of clothing, each book, felt like a piece of my old life slipping away. My childhood room didn't even feel like mine anymore, as if some other Emma had lived here. Eliza hung out in the doorway, her face impossible to read. I wish it didn't have to be like this, she said, her voice soft, loaded with sympathy that didn't quite ring true. I kept my back to her, shoving things into my duffel. Yeah, me too. My words felt heavy, flat. She tried again. It just looks so bad, Emma. Maybe time away will help you figure out how all this happened. I froze for a second, gripping the dresser. I didn't do this, I said quietly. I don't know how or why, but I didn't. Eliza stepped back into the hall. I hope you figure it out. For your sake, really. Her words echoed in my head as I zipped the bag and walked out. Nothing made sense. Something was off. But for now, All I could do was leave. The night air bit at my skin as I stepped outside, duffel slung over my shoulder. The house behind me, once full of warmth and memories, now loomed dark, heavy with accusation. I paused at the end of the driveway, glancing back at the window where the light still glowed. Dad hadn't even come out to see me go. He'd made up his mind, and that was that. Eliza's words kept repeating in my head. I hope you figure it out for your sake. They sounded hollow, but I couldn't shake them. How had it all gone so wrong? Why did everyone think I was guilty when I hadn't done a thing? As I walked down the street, clutching my bag, I promised myself one thing. I might not have answers yet, but I wasn't giving up. I'd find out the truth, no matter what. Something felt off, and I couldn't let it go, even if nobody else cared. The bus station was almost empty when I got there, the late hour only making the place seem more forgotten, more like a backdrop to some life I didn't ask for. Harsh, flickering lights made long shadows crawl across the grimy tile floor. Every step echoed in the hollow space, and even the vending machines buzzed like they were nervous. I bought a one-way ticket to the closest city, my hands shaking as I handed over the money. The clerk slid the ticket across the counter without even glancing up, as if I were invisible, as if people like me passed through every day, lost, desperate, clutching whatever they had left. I took the ticket and found a seat in the farthest corner, away from the handful of people waiting for their own escape. Nobody met my eyes. Nobody asked questions. I felt like a ghost, already half gone. Reality slammed into me as I stared down at that crumpled ticket in my palm. I was really doing this. I was on my own now. No home, no family, nothing to fall back on. My mind spun in tight, panicked circles, questions chasing each other with no answers in sight. How did everything unravel so fast? Yesterday I had a future, a place to belong. Now I had nothing but a bag, a ticket, and the bitter taste of betrayal. Who would go this far to frame me, and why? What did I ever do to deserve this? A bus engine growled somewhere out on the street, dragging me out of my thoughts. When it pulled up with a hiss of brakes and a yawning door, I grabbed my bag and stood. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself forward. This wasn't the life I'd imagined. Not even close. But it was the only life I had left. All I could do was keep moving, step by step, trying not to look back. Those first days after leaving, home blurred together in a smear of cheap motels, instant noodles, and sleepless nights. I drifted from one place to the next, barely making it through. Every morning, I woke up in a new room with faded wallpaper and unfamiliar sounds, my chest tight with anxiety. My mind wouldn't stop looping over everything I'd lost. My room, my dad's laugh, the smell of coffee in the kitchen, the normalcy I'd taken for granted. Grief hit me in waves, sometimes so strong I thought I'd drown. But I couldn't just lie there feeling sorry for myself. Doing nothing wasn't going to fix any of this. Survival meant action. I needed a job, any job, just to keep a roof over my head. I landed at a little clothing shop downtown, after a week of walking the streets and scanning bulletin boards. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something. Folding shirts, ringing up sales, sweeping floors. It kept my hands busy and my mind from spiraling. The work was simple, repetitive, but it was a relief to have somewhere to go, a routine to cling to. That's where I met Mia. She was a few years older, with a shock of red hair and a sharp, no-nonsense attitude. She could cut through small talk like a knife, but somehow, she got people to trust her. She never pried, never asked the questions others might, but she had a way of making you feel like you could say anything and she'd understand. One slow afternoon, we were folding shirts near the register, moving through the motions, when I suddenly started talking. It just spilled out, like I'd been holding my breath for days. "It's been a nightmare," I muttered, stacking sweaters with trembling hands. I don't even know how my name got dragged into it. I've never done anything like that." Mia paused, leaning against the counter, her eyes sharpening in concern. "That's rough," she said, her voice low. "You said it was loans and fraud, right? Ever think maybe someone pretending to be you did it?" Her words hit me like a punch. Pretending to be me. The idea sounded insane. But as soon as she said it, it started to make a terrible kind of sense. "I guess it's possible," I said slowly, my heart pounding. "But who'd go that far?" She shrugged, watching me closely. "Is there anyone who looks enough like you to pull it off?" Her question hung in the air, heavy, almost suffocating. My mind jumped straight to the one person who matched, Eliza. But no, why would she ever do something like that? Still, the idea dug in and wouldn't let go. The more I tried to dismiss it, the more it circled back. I hesitated, hands frozen over a stack of shirts, the fabric soft and fragile under my fingers. "There's my twin sister," I said, the words tumbling out awkwardly. "We're identical. Eliza. But she'd never do something like that. Everyone loves her." Mia raised an eyebrow, resting her elbows on the counter. "A twin? Identical? Emma, come on. If someone's pulling this off, they'd need to look exactly like you. And you're sure your sister's completely innocent?" I shook my head, my stomach a tight, sick knot. She's always been the perfect one. Dad trusts her completely. Everybody does. There's no way she'd risk all that. Why would she frame me? Even as I said it, doubt crept in, cold and persistent. Mia let out a short, humorless laugh. "I don't know. Jealousy, spite. You'd be surprised what people do when they think they can get away with it. Who better to impersonate you than someone who looks just like you?" Her words made me squirm, but I couldn't ignore them. Now a little voice in my head wouldn't shut up, replaying every memory with new suspicion. I didn't want to believe it, couldn't believe it, but the pieces started lining up whether I liked it or not. What if the person I trusted most had been behind it all? What if Eliza, the sister I'd shared everything with, had used our sameness as a weapon? That night, I lay awake in my tiny apartment, the ceiling cracked and stained, my mind spinning. Mia's words echoed, refusing to fade. Who better to impersonate you than someone who looks just like you? Eliza had always been the one people noticed, the one who could talk her way out of anything. Me, I was the quiet one, the easy target. I scrolled through old photos on my phone, the two of us side by side, mirror images. I remembered how she used to joke about how easy it would be to trick people, even teachers and friends, back when it all seemed harmless. Just a joke, but now those memories felt tainted, as if every laugh was hiding something darker. As much as I hated the thought, I couldn't shake it. If it was Eliza, she'd gone all in, making sure I took the blame while she walked away untouched. And if that was true, I needed proof. I couldn't go to her, or my dad, or anyone, without something solid. This was about more than just clearing my name now. It was about finding the truth, no matter how much it hurt, or how alone it made me feel. The next morning, I woke up with a new kind of resolve. I wouldn't call Dad. I wouldn't call Eliza. Not yet. If Mia was right, even a little bit, facing them without proof would only make things worse. I had to be careful, had to think 2 steps ahead. For the first time, the possibility of justice, of reclaiming my life, seemed just barely within reach. I just had to find the courage to chase it, no matter what I uncovered about the people I loved. Instead of letting my anxiety spiral out of control, I made a conscious choice. I would channel all that nervous energy into actually doing something productive at work. I needed answers and I needed them badly. So, after a morning of restless fidgeting, I found Mia by the lockers and told her straight up that I wanted to get to the bottom of the whole mess. I was bracing myself for skepticism, maybe even reluctance. After all, it wasn't her problem. But Mia's reaction caught me off guard. She broke into a wide, almost gleeful grin and clapped her hands together, the sound echoing a little too loudly in the empty hallway. "Finally! I was starting to wonder when you'd decide to fight back," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Let me help, please. This is the kind of thing I live for." I hesitated, feeling both grateful and guilty. "You really don't have to get involved," I said, my voice small as I twisted a wire hanger between my fingers, the metal squeaking under the pressure. "Don't be ridiculous," Mia shot back, giving me a playful wink that somehow managed to be both reassuring and conspiratorial. "Two heads are better than one, right? Besides, if someone's messing with you, I want to see them taken down. So, let's start at the beginning. Where are these fraud claims coming from? Do you have any paperwork, emails, anything we can look at?" I nodded, feeling some of my tension ebb away under her confidence. I reached into my bag and pulled out a battered folder, thick with papers I'd managed to collect. Every notice, every demand letter, every official document that had landed at my dad's house over the past month. Just holding it made my hands sweat. Mia slid into problem-solving mode immediately, flipping through the pages with laser focus, her brow furrowing as she read. "These are mostly loans and bank accounts," she murmured, tapping her finger rhythmically against a stack of statements. "Let's see if there's any pattern. Were they all opened around the same time? In the same place?" She started organizing the papers by date and institution, setting up neat piles on the break room table. For the first time in what felt like ages, I felt a flicker of hope. Something I'd almost forgotten. Mia's determination was infectious. Her careful attention to each detail made the whole thing seem less overwhelming, as if it was actually solvable. "It all started when those court orders showed up at my dad's," I told her quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. Each one was worse than the last. They said I'd defaulted on loans, opened accounts I didn't even know existed, and everything looked so official. Legal threats, warnings about wage garnishments, the whole 9 yards. I felt like I was being buried alive in paperwork. Mia nodded sympathetically but didn't lose her focus. Over the next several days, we fell into a kind of routine. On our lunch breaks or after our shifts, we'd meet at her tiny apartment, wedged into mismatched chairs around her kitchen table. The place was always cluttered with notebooks and half-empty mugs of tea, and yet it felt like a safe haven. We'd spread out the documents, tracing every signature, every address, every date. Mia had this uncanny ability to spot things I'd missed. Minute differences in handwriting, inconsistencies in the way my name was spelled, or the fact that all the questionable accounts had been opened in the next city over. She'd point out the little things, like the way a certain E curled differently, or how the dates lined up with times I knew for sure I hadn't been traveling. She seemed to thrive on the challenge, her excitement for the hunt balancing out my anxious energy. One afternoon, as sunlight slanted across the table, Mia slid a document toward me. "Look at this," she said quietly. "The signature's close but not quite right. And every single account here was opened in the next city over. That can't be a coincidence." My heart thudded in my chest. A memory surfaced. Eliza, my sister, had spent a lot of time in that city a couple of years ago. She'd told us she was volunteering, helping out at some nonprofit. I'd never questioned it. Why would I? Now, the words stuck in my throat. "Eliza was living there for a while," I said. "She always said it was for a volunteer project. Do you think—" Mia leaned back, the playful glint gone from her eyes. She looked serious, almost protective. "It's looking like someone used your name in that city. And if Eliza was there, well..." She didn't finish the sentence, but the weight of her silence pressed in. I swallowed hard, torn between disbelief and suspicion. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but everything seems to point back to her. Mia nodded, her resolve hardening. "We'll need more proof. If she did this, there's a bigger trail. We should look for transactions, maybe even surveillance records if we can get them. Anything that links her directly to these accounts." Her confidence was grounding. For the first time, I didn't feel totally powerless. I wasn't ready to accuse Eliza, my own sister, without definitive proof, but the pieces were starting to form a picture. We were getting closer, and that knowledge steadied me. Our first real step was to visit a small credit union on the outskirts of town. The building was nondescript, a faded sign above the door and the faint smell of paper and stale coffee inside. As we walked in, a young woman behind the counter glanced up and smiled brightly. "Welcome back," she chirped, her voice cheerful and familiar. I froze, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" I managed, my mind racing. The woman's smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. "Oh, sorry. I just thought I'd seen you in here before." You look really familiar. Mia shot me a quick, meaningful look but didn't say anything. I forced myself to smile. Actually, I'm here about a loan that was opened in my name. I'd like to see the details if possible. The woman nodded, her fingers flying over the keyboard. After a moment, she frowned at the screen. Yes, I see the account. It was opened 2 years ago. You brought the documents in yourself, so we'll just need to verify some information. In person? I echoed, feeling a tremor in my voice. She nodded, her eyes flicking between me and the computer. You brought your ID and signed everything here at the branch. I remember, actually. It was an unusually warm day, and we chatted about the weather. Mia leaned against the counter, her posture relaxed but her gaze sharp. Is there a way we could see a copy of those documents? We just want to make sure all the information is correct. The employee hesitated, glancing around as if checking for a manager. I can't let you take them, but I can show you the scanned copies on our system. She turned her monitor toward us. On the screen, my name was printed at the top, and below it, a signature that looked eerily like mine. But what caught my breath was the photo attached, a face so similar to mine it could fool anyone, except I knew my own features better than anyone. The chin was a little sharper, the eyes set just a bit wider. It was Eliza. My sister, using my name, my identity, right here in black and white. Mia's voice was barely a whisper. Emma, that's your sister, isn't it? My stomach dropped. The reality was undeniable. I felt my hands start to shake, the truth staring back at me from the screen. Eliza had done this. Or at least it looked that way. We spent the rest of the day chasing leads, visiting 2 more banks and loan offices. Each place greeted me like a returning customer, referencing conversations I'd never had. At one office, a middle-aged man behind the desk grinned. Back again. Didn't expect to see you so soon, he joked, as if we were old friends sharing an inside joke. Each encounter made the knot in my stomach tighter, the unease growing every time someone mistook me for Eliza or referenced a memory that wasn't mine. It was surreal, like watching someone else live a parallel life with my name. But with every document, every slip of recognition, we gathered more evidence. The truth was coming into focus, piece by piece. I didn't know what would come next, or how I would face Eliza, but I wasn't alone anymore. Mia was by my side, fierce and unwavering, and for the first time, I felt like we might actually have a chance to set things right. I mustered a polite smile, though inside dread twisted my stomach into knots. Actually, I'm here about some discrepancies with an account opened in my name, I said, each word measured, cautious. The man's affable expression faltered as he looked up at me, concern overtaking his features. There's an issue, but you brought all the documents yourself last month. Mia, ever perceptive, leaned forward, her voice cool yet insistent. Was there any identification used? Maybe you still have a scan on file. He hesitated, brows knitting, then nodded. Yes, of course. Give me a moment to pull it up. His fingers danced across the keyboard. The monitor flickered to life, displaying a series of scanned forms and, finally, an ID. I felt my insides lurch. There, unmistakable on the screen, was Eliza's face. My face, but not me. Smiling back, the name below it mine. My mind reeled, the truth slamming into me like a tidal wave. Eliza. It was her. Had always been her. The handwriting on the signature line, the confident posture in the photo, the assurance that only she could fake so perfectly. All of it made sense now. My own twin sister had used our identical appearance as her ticket to my life. She'd stolen my identity, opened accounts, taken loans, and left my name to bear the consequences. A storm of emotions crashed over me. Shock, rage, betrayal so sharp it left me breathless. I stared at the screen, unable to look away from the image that was both me and not. Mia squeezed my shoulder, grounding me, her face a reflection of my own anger and disbelief. She's been orchestrating this from the beginning, she said, voice low but biting, her words hanging heavy in the room. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, to confront Eliza and force her to admit what she'd done. But I couldn't move. I was trapped, paralyzed by the enormity of her betrayal. My own sister had set me up, and worst of all, my father had taken her side without hesitation, never once questioning her story. As we exited the office, my thoughts spun, the past year replayed in my mind, every odd moment now cast in a sinister light. The way Eliza had suddenly started flaunting luxury handbags and tailored coats, her wrists glittering with jewelry at family gatherings. I remembered once, curiosity getting the better of me. I'd asked how she could afford such extravagance. She'd just laughed, tossing her hair. A little treat for myself. I've been saving up. I believed her then. Why wouldn't I? She'd always seemed so composed, so in control. But now those memories were knives. I saw the evasions, the vague explanations, the way she'd deflect when I pressed for details. Her new wardrobe, her flashy purchases. They hadn't matched her modest salary, but I'd never questioned it deeply. I trusted her. I thought she was proud of her success, not that she was siphoning off mine. That night, sleep eluded me. I kept replaying every conversation, every smile, every time she'd seemed just a little too pleased with herself. The realization was a weight I couldn't shake. She hadn't just stolen my money. She'd stolen my life, my reputation, my chance at a future untouched by suspicion. The next morning, desperate for answers and a way forward, I found myself in the office of David Cole, a lawyer recommended by a friend of Mia's. He was calm, collected, his presence somehow reassuring. The office was orderly, every file and book in its place, the scent of coffee lingering in the air, a stark contrast to the chaos consuming my mind. "I've been notified I defaulted on multiple loans," I began, forcing my voice to remain steady, despite the anxiety humming through me. "I didn't do this. I need to understand what happens if I pay, or if I don't." David listened intently, fingers steepled, then leaned back. "If you pay off the debts, it will stop legal actions. No lawsuits, no wage garnishments. But the record of default remains. Creditors may note your effort, but unless they agree to remove the black marks from your report, those defaults will still haunt your credit history. It's rare, but sometimes, if you negotiate and can prove extenuating circumstances, lenders might agree to remove or amend the record. It's worth asking, but you can't count on it." I took a shaky breath, letting the information settle. "And if I don't pay?" He nodded grim. "Then you're exposed. Lenders will sue to recover what they're owed. If they get a judgment, they can go after your assets, bank accounts, even a portion of your wages. Your credit score will plummet, affecting loans, housing, even job prospects. It's a slippery slope, and it gets harder to recover the longer it goes on." The reality was bleak. I could see now how a single act of fraud could ripple out, poisoning every part of my life. Would paying at least show that I'm trying to make it right, even if I didn't do this? David considered. "It demonstrates good faith. It tells lenders you're not running away, that you're responsible. But to truly clear your name, you need to address the root cause. If you're the victim of identity theft, you have to prove it. That means more than just telling your side. You need documentation, evidence, official reports." I hesitated, my voice barely audible. "What if, hypothetically, someone stole my identity and took out those loans? Would that protect me?" He leaned forward, eyes sharp and compassionate. "If you're a victim of identity theft, you're not liable, but you must prove it. File a police report, notify every lender, dispute the accounts with the credit bureaus. The process can be long and draining. You'll have to collect any evidence that supports your claim. Alibis, inconsistencies in signatures, addresses, anything that shows you weren't involved. The more thorough you are, the better your chances." "And if I can't prove it?" I whispered, dreading the answer. He shook his head, regret in his eyes. "Then it's an uphill battle. The burden is on you. Without evidence, lenders and credit agencies will assume the debts are yours. But don't give up hope. Sometimes even small pieces of evidence, a receipt showing you were out of town, a witness, a security camera image, can tip the scales. Start gathering everything you can. Time matters. The sooner you act, the better." His words lingered as I left. I realized that the nightmare wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming my identity, my reputation, my peace of mind. Eliza's betrayal had upended everything I thought I knew about family, trust, and myself. But if I wanted my life back, I couldn't freeze anymore. I'd have to fight. I'd have to become relentless, methodical, and above all, hopeful that the truth would come out, no matter how many pieces I'd have to pick up along the way. It turns out those application documents really do matter. A lot more than I ever realized. As David spoke, I felt the full weight of his words pressing down on me, settling on my shoulders like a lead blanket. I nodded, my mind racing through everything he was telling me. So if I just paid off the loans, thinking I could fix it all by throwing money at the problem, that wouldn't actually erase my name from those accounts? My voice sounded small, almost hopeful. David shook his head, patient but firm. Not entirely, he explained. Sure, paying off the loans would stop the lawsuits and collection calls. They couldn't sue me for unpaid debts if the debts didn't exist anymore. But unless I could prove the loans weren't my doing, my name would remain linked to them. The damage would linger on my record, shadowing every financial move I made. If there's even a possibility someone else is responsible for this, you need to start investigating now, he warned. The longer you wait, the harder it'll be to track down the evidence you need. Time, it seemed, was my enemy. His advice made perfect sense, but something about hearing it spoken aloud made it feel terrifyingly real. This wasn't something I could just shove aside and hope it disappeared on its own. David leaned in, his voice steady but gentler now, as if he could sense the anxiety twisting inside me. If you can prove your identity was stolen, and you weren't the one who opened those loans, you won't have to pay the debt. The lenders are required to shut down the fraudulent accounts and stop harassing you. Even your credit report can be cleaned up. Those black marks erased, your financial future reclaimed. I felt a flicker of relief, a tiny spark of hope igniting in the gloom. But almost immediately another question gnawed at me. What happened to the person who actually stole my identity? What would become of them if I brought all the evidence forward? David's expression hardened, his tone growing firm and uncompromising. If you have proof and you report it, it becomes a criminal matter. The police get involved. The person responsible could face real, serious consequences. Fraud, forgery, theft, whatever fits the crimes committed. They could be ordered to pay fines, make restitution, or even serve jail time, depending on how much damage they caused and how the courts saw it. My stomach twisted itself into knots. So if I came forward, I could clear my name. But the person who did this could end up behind bars. David met my gaze unwavering. Yes, he said simply, but you need to put yourself first. Even if the culprit is someone close to you, you have to remember, this isn't just about money, it's about justice, about protecting yourself from further harm, from letting someone else control your life and your future. His words echoed in my chest like a drumbeat. I nodded, feeling the gravity of the choice settle in my bones. If it came to that, I'd have to decide. Protect the person who betrayed me or finally stand up for myself, for my future. It wasn't just my life she'd upended. It was the lives of everyone who cared about me, who'd watched me struggle and couldn't understand why. The decision felt impossibly heavy, but deep down I knew I couldn't keep running from it. Eliza had to face the consequences, not just for my sake, but for the family she'd deceived and hurt too. Her mistakes couldn't be allowed to ruin everything I'd worked for, everything our parents had sacrificed for. Still, the thought of being the person who sent her to jail made me feel sick and hollow. That's when the idea began to take shape in my mind, a plan that offered a sliver of control. I'd confront her, but on my own terms. Our family reunion was coming up. Everyone would be there, all the people she'd lied to and manipulated. It would be the perfect opportunity. I'd gather every shred of proof, every document, every undeniable fact that would force her to face what she'd done. I wanted her to see the look on Dad's face, to feel the weight of his disappointment, something no punishment could ever match. But I didn't want to destroy her outright, not if she was willing to make amends. If she agreed to fix it, to pay back the loans, to clear my name and accept responsibility quietly, I wouldn't turn her in. I wouldn't have to drag our family through the courts or watch her be led away in handcuffs. It felt like the only way to balance justice with mercy. She'd be spared the harshest consequences, and I'd finally get peace. The week leading up to the reunion was a blur of activity and anxiety. I barely slept, my mind running through every conversation, every memory, every detail she might try to twist or deny. Every spare moment I sorted through evidence, photos of forged signatures, bank statements with discrepancies, even secret recordings of bank employees accidentally confirming her lies with slips of the tongue. Piece by piece, I reconstructed the puzzle she'd tried so hard to scatter. The process was exhausting, but with each new bit of proof, I felt a little stronger, a little more prepared. Mia was my constant support, her steady presence keeping me grounded when I felt overwhelmed or doubted myself. "You've got this, Emma," she whispered, as I packed everything into a thick folder the night before. Just stick to the plan. Don't let her turn this around on you. My hands trembled as I zipped the folder shut. She's been doing this for so long, Mia. What if no one believes me? What if Dad takes her side again, like always? Mia squeezed my shoulder, her grip reassuring. This isn't just your word against hers anymore. You have proof, documents, facts, evidence she can't explain away. You've done everything you can, Emma. Now let the truth speak. Let it be seen. Her words stayed with me as I lay in bed that night, tangled in a knot of dread and hope. Tomorrow I'd put everything on the line. Tomorrow everything would change, for better or worse. When I finally walked into the reunion, it felt like stepping onto a battlefield. A wave of cold, assessing stares swept over me, cutting through the air like a blade. Conversations stalled, laughter faded, and suddenly, 50 pairs of eyes were riveted on me, full of suspicion and judgment. My heart thundered in my chest, but I forced myself to stand tall, to keep moving forward with purpose. I refused to let their looks or whispered comments break me. I heard the murmurs trailing behind me. Can you believe she had the nerve to show up after everything? But I didn't let them slow my steps. I was here for the truth. No more hiding, no more running. Today, the story would finally be told. And this time, I'd have the courage and the evidence to make everyone listen. She's done things most people wouldn't believe unless they saw it themselves. Even now, rumors are swirling. Something about her being taken to court, though nobody wants to say it out loud. The house was overflowing, every room and hallway packed with relatives, faces familiar and half-forgotten, voices layered in a constant hum, their presence pressing in from every direction. I hadn't seen some of these people since I was a child, when family gatherings still meant laughter and games instead of tension thick as fog. My father held court by the fireplace, his posture ramrod straight, his voice low as he spoke with Uncle Richard. He was always the pillar of the family, the one everyone turned to for decisions. But tonight, he looked older, weighed down by something more than just age. When his eyes found me across the sea of faces, I saw his expression shift, hope flickering out, replaced by disappointment and something harder to name. The air between us felt brittle. Eliza, as always, was in her element, bright, dazzling, a performer on her favorite stage. She lingered near the buffet, her movements graceful as she gestured with her drink, her laughter ringing out just a touch too loudly. A cluster of cousins orbited her, eager for scraps of her attention. She caught my gaze for a heartbeat, her eyes narrowing, razor sharp, before she smoothed her face into that look that feigned concern. Her favorite weapon, a mask of sympathy over spite. "Emma," Dad called, his voice slicing through the chatter, clipped and icy. "I'm surprised you even showed up." I forced a smile I didn't feel, the kind that kept my chin high even as my stomach churned. "Of course I showed up. It's a family reunion, isn't it?" I replied, my words careful, even as I felt the weight of every eye in the room shift to me. I would not be made small, not tonight. The atmosphere was suffocating, a pressure that seemed to squeeze the air from my lungs. Eliza made her way over, hips swaying, her smile polished to perfection. She swirled her drink, her tone syrupy sweet, but laced with venom only I could hear. "It's brave of you to come here after everything that's happened," she purred. "I know it's been such a difficult time for you." My jaw clenched, and I felt the folder beneath my arm grow impossibly heavy, its contents burning through me. "You have no idea, Eliza," I said, my voice low, steady. "But that's exactly why I'm here. I have something to say, and everyone in this room deserves to hear it." For a moment, the noise died away. The crowd's attention sharpened, their curiosity piqued, their judgment poised on the edge of their seats. Eliza's self-assurance faltered, the edges of her smile twitching as she realized she no longer controlled the narrative. This time, I would not be silenced by her performance. This time the truth would have a voice. My heart thundered, but I found my strength in the memory of all the nights I'd lain awake, replaying every accusation, every suspicious glance, every cruel whisper that had shadowed me for months. I took a step forward, the room parting like a tide. Disbelief, anger, pity, they all flickered across the faces of my family, but I looked only at Eliza, who stood frozen, shoulders taut. I know you've all heard stories about me, I began, my voice carrying across the room. Stories that paint me as a liar, a thief. You've been told I defaulted on loans I never even signed for, that I brought shame to this family's name. I've felt the sting of your judgment, the weight of your distrust, and it hurts, more than I can say, to think you could believe I'd ever betray you like that. I let my words hang in the air. Eliza shifted, her mask slipping just enough to reveal the anxiety beneath. I inhaled, steadying myself. But I'm not here to beg for your forgiveness with empty promises. I came with proof. I raised the folder, my hands shaking only slightly. Inside are bank statements, witness testimonies, even recordings from the places where those loans were supposedly taken out. Evidence that tells the real story. A ripple of murmur moved through the crowd, tension mounting. I opened the folder, pulling out the first page, a loan application. I held it high, letting everyone see the signature and photo attached. This is one of the applications, I said, my voice unwavering. Look at the signature. It's not mine. And the photo, yes, it has my name, but it isn't me. It's her. I turned, arm outstretched, finger pointing directly at Eliza. Gasps ran through the room like a shockwave. For a heartbeat, Eliza's carefully constructed facade crumbled. She scrambled to recover, her laugh coming out brittle and forced. That's absurd, she scoffed, voice higher than before. Why would I ever do something like that? Emma, you're reaching. This is just sad. But I pressed on, laying out every scrap of evidence, pages of mismatched handwriting, records that showed Eliza's presence in cities I'd never visited, statements from bank employees who remembered her face, even timestamps and surveillance images that placed her at the scene. With each new piece, I felt the energy in the room change. Doubt seeped into the faces around me, their certainty about Eliza's innocence slipping away. By the time I finished, the air felt electric, crackling with uncertainty and shock. I turned to my father, meeting his eyes that had looked at me with disappointment for so long. Now he looked lost, his mouth working soundlessly as he struggled to process what he'd seen. Dad, I said, my voice breaking with raw emotion. I know how hard this is to accept. But everything you need to see is right here. Eliza used my name, my identity to fund her life. She left me to deal with the fallout. Eliza surged forward, her composure gone, voice splintering with panic. You can't honestly believe her. She's making this up. She's jealous. You all know she's always been jealous. She wants to ruin me because she can't stand to see me happy. But her protest was drowned out by the weight of the evidence. The family's attention had shifted. I saw it in their faces, their certainty unraveling, replaced with confusion and a dawning sense of betrayal. The whispers began to spread, questions tumbling from one shocked relative to another, eyes darting between Eliza and me. For the first time, the burden of suspicion began to lift from my shoulders, replaced by the heavy silence of realization. People who had turned away from me now looked with regret, shame coloring their faces as they remembered every harsh word, every cold shoulder. Eliza's face twisted with fury, her voice climbing to a shrill pitch. This is a witch hunt. I don't have to listen to this, she shrieked, pushing through the crowd. Each step echoed on the hardwood floor as she stormed out, her exit punctuated by the slam of the front door. You're all fools if you believe her, she shouted, her voice muffled by distance and anger. The silence left in her wake was profound, the kind that fills a room when something irrevocable has happened. Gradually, the relatives began to stir, their voices hushed, their eyes now turned to me. Not with accusation, but with something like remorse. A few approached, hesitant but sincere, their apologies awkward and overdue. The sense of isolation I'd carried for so long began to recede, replaced by a fragile hope. The truth, finally spoken, had changed everything. And as the night wore on, I realized that the wounds Eliza had left might never fully heal. But at last, they would no longer belong to me alone. I'm so sorry, Emma, one of my cousins said, her eyes filling up with tears. I just couldn't stand there and listen. My heart was pounding as I turned and pushed through the crowd, following Eliza. I needed to talk to her, just the two of us. Emma, wait! My dad called after me. I paused for a split second, then kept moving. I heard him hurrying behind me as I stepped into the cool night air, scanning the parking lot for Eliza. There she was, hands trembling as she fumbled with her car keys, trying to unlock the door. Eliza! I yelled. My voice echoed across the empty lot. She froze, then turned, her face caught somewhere between fury and panic. Dad caught up, breathing hard, glancing from me to Eliza with confusion and anger all over his face. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the tension. I stepped forward, locking eyes with Eliza. "You're not running from this. We need to talk, right now." She glared back, panic flickering behind her defiant stare. She crossed her arms and leaned against the car, like she thought she could shield herself. "Admit it, Eliza," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Tell Dad the truth about what you did, or I'll have to go to the police." Her jaw clenched. For a second I thought she might explode, but she felt the weight of it, and she knew she was cornered. "Eliza," Dad said, voice cracking, desperate now. "Is it true? Did you really do this?" She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Fine," she snapped, throwing up her hands. "Yes, I did it, okay? I used her name for the loans. I didn't think it would get this far. I thought it would all blow over and nobody would even notice." Dad stumbled back, face pale. "How could you do this? To your own sister? To this family? I didn't think she'd go all martyr about it." Eliza shot back, voice shaking. "I needed the money. She's always managed to fly under the radar. I figured she'd just take the heat and move on." I shook my head, my heart thudding in my chest. "You didn't just hurt me, Eliza, you destroyed my life. And I was ready to let it go if you just owned up and fixed it. But if you don't settle those loans and clear my name, I'll make sure everyone knows what you did, including the police." Eliza went still, my words hanging in the air. She had nothing left to say, no clever escape. Her tough front crumbled, her shoulders slumped and tears welled in her eyes. She looked at the ground, couldn't meet our eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely louder than a breath. "I never meant for it to get this bad. I didn't think." Dad stared at her, disappointment and disbelief written all over his face. "You didn't think? Do you understand what you've done? To your sister, to this family?" She wiped her eyes, shaking her head. "I'll fix it," she said quickly, voice trembling. "I'll pay everything back. I'll settle the loans. I'll clear Emma's name. I swear I'll do whatever it takes." I watched her, waiting for some sign she was just playing us again. But for once, she actually looked ashamed. "You better mean that," I said, my voice quieter but still firm. "Because if you don't, I won't hesitate. This is your last chance, Eliza." She nodded, frantic. "I do. I'll do it, Emma. I promise." Over the next few weeks, Eliza actually kept her word. She called the banks, paid off the loans, got the paperwork to clear my name. It wasn't smooth or fast, and it didn't undo the mess overnight. But piece by piece, my name was restored. I'll never forget what Eliza did. Still, I found a kind of closure. Justice happened, not out of revenge, but accountability. What Eliza did left scars, but it also forced me to stand up for myself and take back my life. My family finally started to see me for who I really am, not the person they'd painted in their heads. I don't know if I'll ever trust Eliza completely again, but I found peace knowing I'd finally stepped out of her shadow and into my own light.